Hey everyone, so this is my Bitcoin miner immersion setup. It looks a little bit intimidating at first with all the hoses going everywhere, piping going everywhere, but I've been running it stable for about just under a week now, so I thought I would make a video giving an overview in case anyone wanted to build a similar setup. So you'll see that I have an S9 inside here. I've got the power supply just out on top, and it's running in there without its fans that I took off. So the fans are off. I've got an S19, which I don't have plugged in right now just because of the noise, but I'm planning to immerse that after. Because it's so expensive, I decided to test things out with the S9 first. And then I've got another S9 that I'll drop in there. So the first time I dropped the S9 in, I put fan emulators or fan spoofers on, these little chips. They kind of look like, this. This is 3 chips here. You can buy these, they're like over $5 or something. Cheap on eBay. Fan emulator. And after you take the fans off, it's just telling them that telling the system that there's actually a fan there when there really isn't. And so I put those on and I just dropped it in, and I had Brains installed on the S9, Brains OS system, and I just let it go. But I didn't change the fan number down to 0, and I also didn't get rid of the temperature control settings. So that was a mistake, so I'll show you that on the computer in a separate video. But the brain setup. But when I did it that way, the numbers were all over the place and it couldn't get stabilized, and I ended up screwing up my power supply. So I've ordered another power supply to put on an 1800 watt one so that I can crank it up even harder when it gets in the fluid. So it's going well so far. I've got a temperature gauge here, red being the output side of the tank, so at the top of the tank where the hot water comes out, and blue being the input side of the tank. So essentially what's going on here is you have your tank and your primary loop, so the first loop. And I did that in copper. So what you see in copper is the primary loop. So it comes out of the tank at the top, it goes down in through a filter, which I've got there, and you want to use anything that's friendly for biodiesel. Those materials are good for the fluid that's in the tank. So it goes past there, gets to the pump, and then it goes back up into the bottom side of the tank. So the colder water comes through there and goes up. And how it gets cold is on the other side of the pump, you can see this heat exchanger. Okay, so this is a little heat exchanger, and basically it's saying, okay, take this water, this hot water, put it through here, and exchange it through metal plates with this cold water in the secondary loop. And then it goes up into the tank cooler because it's been exchanged with cold plates from the colder loop. So this gauge here is just a pressure gauge to tell me what's going on, and that's the primary loop, and that is all using dielectric fluid. I use this place called Engineered Fluids, and they sell something called BitCool, which is specifically designed for this. And they've got a bunch of interesting videos on their site, Engineered Fluids and BitCool, and you can just order it. It's expensive, like 2 of these things to get to Canada. I think it wound up costing me like $700 to get all of it here, and by the time I paid the taxes across the border and everything, so 700 Canadian dollars. It's a lot. That was 40 liters, and that filled the tank. So that primary loop's all in BitCool. And then the secondary loop is just water, and I'm sending this water out to various places to dissipate the heat. So it's being that water is being heated up through that heat exchanger we talked about, and this primary loop fluid is going through, heating up that heat exchanger, which is heating up this water in the secondary loop, and the secondary loop water is going out to various places. So here's where I've got it going. I've got furnace radiator, hydronic radiator. I've got a little fan behind it, just blowing air through it. The idea is later this is going to go into my furnace duct. This square just goes into my furnace duct, and the furnace fan will run and past that, and the hot water in there will heat the air, and it'll heat the house. Okay, second piece is just a hydronic baseboard heater, so just a water baseboard heater. You can see the hot water comes in, goes all through here, comes back, and it's just the natural air circulating through there, so it's not as effective as if there was a forced air fan. So that's heating the garage. That'll end up in the furnace. So there's 2 of the 3 loops. So on here, this is this manifold, and so there's 1 loop I'm not using. You can see this one here just goes there, nothing happens. And then the other ones, I can control, the flow. So one is going to the garage baseboard heater, one goes to the furnace rat, and then another one I've got going outside, and I'll walk you out there and show you that. There's little flow meters on them telling you how many liters per minute are going through those. You can see that this one's not being used, and these ones are just at the max down at the bottom. Okay, so that secondary loop has the same pump on it, and it's just pumping the water through. It's just a little pump, $100 or less, and it's pumping that water around through these secondary loop items. So we'll go outside in my garage here now. Turn the light on. And big old hydronic heater with a big fan on the back. And it is just the exact same as the furnace rad with the fan behind it, but just kind of a big solid unit with a case. So it's the exact same idea as this one here, where it's got the coils and then a fan behind it, but it's just a big solid unit. It was in a big factory somewhere, and they took it out, and I bought it off them. It actually had a leak, and ended up having to repair the leak and everything. So yeah, the only other thing to mention here is that there is a pressure tank on the secondary loop. It's a little 2-gallon pressure tank, and that just keeps the pressure up so I don't lose a bunch of pressure in the secondary loop with the temperature change. When the water gets hotter, the pressure should go up. And that's the secondary loop. So I think I'll draw all this out in a diagram once I kind of got it perfected, so you can kind of see, because there's a lot of things here, right? Like these 2 guys are to help me let out air pressure, because as you're filling up the loop, you compress a bunch of air in there from the pump, and you need to let that air out. There's temperature gauges on the top there of these valves. You can kind of see the temperature of the secondary loop there. So yeah, that's the system with the S9 in it. I'm really looking forward to dropping the S19 in there. The S19 is super loud, and as you can see, this is my kind of golf simulator area in here, full of crap right now from doing all this work, but I don't know, it's just annoying having a super loud miner in there. So drop it in the fluid, it's totally silent, and yeah. The lead up to all this, of course, is the electrical, which I've got a splitter here for the Ethernet, and I've got 4 plugs all on a 20 amp breaker by themselves, and that'll give me enough plugs for the S19 and 2 S9s. So that's the update. I'll let you know how it goes when I drop the S19 in, and if I found anything that needs to be adjusted. But so far for the week, it's been running well. I'm getting a better hash rate, lower temperatures, and less power actually going to it. Set the power limit at 1.35 kilowatts for the S9, and I'm getting 16, just around actually 15.75 terahash consistently from 1.35 kilowatts. So pretty good. So that's the video.